24-year-old Robert Fuller found hung in Palmdale, California. Hey guys, this is Double D from the Entitled Millennials podcast, and this is my Thinking Out Loud series. Around 3:30 a.m. on Wednesday, the body of Robert Fuller was found at Ponce Square in Palmdale, California. After an initial investigation, the county sheriff ruled the death of Robert Fuller a suicide by hanging. However, friends and family of Robert Fuller aren't so sure. Some of those who were close to Robert Fuller saying that it doesn't make sense that he would have committed suicide. It wasn't in his nature. He was an outgoing person, full of hope. Some of his friends and family are speculating, along with some of the activists that have joined in the mourning of Robert Fuller, are speculating that it may have been a lynching. As of right now, the police and the county sheriff's department don't have a lot of evidence to go on. Apparently, there was no recording footage of the incident, despite the fact that this is in a well-traversed public area. And this tragedy is coming in the wake of another recent incident where a 38-year-old Malcolm Harsch was found 50 miles north of here in the town of Victorville, dead from apparently the same situation, hung by the neck. In the wake of both of these incidents, activists and Black Lives Matter, as well as the family and friends of Robert Fuller, have turned out en masse at the area where he was apparently found, calling for justice, calling for an independent investigation. The fact that two black men were found hung in a very similar situation within 10 days of each other in a very close area, all while the height of the Black Lives Matter protest is going on, has a lot of people asking, is this a hate crime? And while there isn't a lot of evidence to say one way or another at this time, I don't know about you guys, but my gut feeling tells me something isn't right. And apparently the friends and family of Robert Fuller and Malcolm Harsch feel the same way. It seems a little too convenient to me that within 10 days, like I said, within 50 miles of one another, two black men are murdered, are hung, and this is happening in the wake of one of the biggest racial movements in the last 50 years. I'm not a very conspiratorial person, but I don't like to believe in coincidences. There's too many things going on here. You know, there's no tape recording despite it being in a public area. Black Lives Matter protests are going on. The police were really quick to rule it as a suicide. And the fact that both of the families and friends of these two individuals, these young black men, are very doubtful about their loved ones taking their own life. To me, I put all these things together and I become very suspicious that some sort of foul play is at heart here. And considering we just saw the recent murder of Ahmaud Arbery by, in this case, two vigilantes not that long ago, I think it's been about 2 months, and the fact that we've seen KKK members and other members of alt-right groups coming out en masse in counter-protests against Black Lives Matter, sometimes armed to the teeth. I don't know, guys. There's just so many different things going on here, and I'm putting my money on the fact that somebody attacked these innocent black men and strung them up and committed a hate crime. And I just can't believe this is happening in America. Like, God, I've said this in the last couple of videos I've made about some of these hate crimes that have gone on, the murder of George Floyd, the murder of Ahmaud Arbery. I can't believe this is happening in the year 2020. You know, but then I take a minute when I'm going through my YouTube stuff or going on Twitter doing social media for our channel, and some of the comments I get coming out advocating for Black Lives Matter or trying to have discussions with people that maybe don't quite understand the scenario or what the movement's about. Some of the hateful, bigoted comments that I've gotten personally and that I've seen from my fellow activists and people from the Black Lives Matter movement just posting on social media their own encounters with individuals that are just outright racist, bigoted, hateful. I mean, it's getting to the point now where I'm no longer surprised. This has become the new norm, and because of the nature of the presidency that we're under right now and the sort of rhetoric that he's used, and not just him, the sort of rhetoric that we've seen from certain YouTubers and people on social media, I mean, it's no surprise anymore. This is something that's been building for several years, even before President Trump got into office, and now with the murder of George Floyd and the subsequent Black Lives Matter protests, it just seems like all of this hate and bigotry that's been boiling under the surface is really coming to a head now. And guys, I don't know, it has me scared, not for myself personally, but for my black brothers and sisters, my black friends, my black community members. You know, I think I'm not alone in feeling like we're all just holding our breath waiting for the moment when something like this happens in our community. And it's just unbelievable, guys. I talked about a few of the things that have gone on with this incident that kind of make a lot of people, including the friends and family of these two young men, question whether or not this was a hate crime rather than a suicide. But I did a little bit of research and wanted to give a brief little back history of the area of Palmdale that kind of lends credence to the fact that this very well may have been a hate crime. So historically, Palmdale has been a majority white metropolitan area up until in the last decade, perhaps 2 decades, where different people have emigrated from other parts of the United States. And in the last 5 to 10 years especially, the area has become a multi-ethnic hub of the region. Now, Palmdale is part of a greater metropolitan area known as Antelope Valley. And in recent years, with growing urbanization and diversification, the region has developed some serious issues with racial tensions. As a result of diversification in this majority white area, known neo-Nazi groups have been spotted in the area, and the police have looked into this in the past. The region over the last few years also has had several complaints against it for prejudice in the police departments and also in housing. Now, with this area having a known history of racial tensions developing in the area, I think it's safe to assume that with Black Lives Matter going on, it's been like a powder keg, and it's sort of sparked in this area of Palmdale. And I truly believe that what we're seeing with the death of these two young black men is in direct reaction to the events of Black Lives Matter. It's racist people, bigoted people acting out in a show of force as a sort of warning to the greater multicultural population that more of this is going to follow if you don't get the fuck out of Dodge. Now, in the wake of these events, it looks like State Attorney General Xavier Becerra is going to be conducting an independent investigation of Robert Fuller. And like I said, it's still really early on. There's not a lot of evidence to go on, but I think all of us will be watching this case very closely as it moves forward. Now, going on the theory that this was indeed a hate crime, a lynching, what does that mean? What does that spell for the future? I can't say for sure, but if I'm thinking out loud like the name of this video, I'd have to guess that it's not looking good. You know, just today, my co-host Johnny sent me a tweet from a Trump supporter saying something along the lines of, all it takes is one tweet and there will be 100 million Americans out on the street, armed and ready to go. Now, I understand that's just a little tweet, and we see hateful and bigoted people tweeting out shit, posting on social media every day. But something about this tweet in particular just felt unnerving to me. And as things continue to escalate with the Black Lives movement, as more and more pressure gets put on, you know, city, state, and the federal government, and people on the other side of the aisle, you know, right-wing white people, begin to feel scared or under pressure, or like their sense of the world or the order of the world that they know is beginning to change, I'm deeply afraid that we're going to start seeing more violence like this against not only our black and brown sisters, but all sorts of minority groups, including LGBTQ. I hate to be sitting here telling you this right now, but I feel like this is just the beginning, guys. We're seeing a very intense radicalization going on with the right. There's a reason why they call it the alt-right. I don't know how I feel about that term or whatever, but there's a very dangerous element of right-wing, alt-right, racist, bigoted people that are not only coming out in the streets armed, protesting, counter-protesting, whatever you want to call it. These people are beginning to get seats in state and local governments, guys. We've seen tweets and statements from elected officials that are blatantly white supremacist. In my own state, in my own district of Iowa, we had Steve King, who thankfully got the boot, but he's just one example, and his example was extremely mild compared to some of the tweets that we've seen coming out recently. We're seeing the rise of something ugly in America right now, and I fear not just for minority groups, but in the future I fear for every American, that if this trend towards hateful, radicalized politics continues, we're all going to be in some serious shit. And my advice to everyone watching that's taking part in Black Lives Matter, that does Antifa-like protests, that is going to be watching the case of Robert Fuller and Malcolm Harsch as closely as I am, my advice to all of you guys, especially to our black and brown brothers and sisters, is to stay together, stay strong, keep fighting, and take some serious consideration about arming yourselves and training yourselves. because this is no longer just advocating for political action against the dissolution or the defunding of the police departments. This is getting to be a fight for your lives, for our lives. I'm thinking out loud, I'm rambling, and really with some of this, I desperately hope I'm wrong. But I'm not going to hold my breath. I do feel some hope. I do feel some hope with how strong the Black Lives Matter protests have been and the sort of action that we're already beginning to see in local and state governments. That makes me hopeful. But still, guys, we need to be eternally vigilant. We need to be ready for anything. We need to be prepared. We need to stay informed. And we need to keep having conversations, these uncomfortable conversations with our friends, neighbors, and family members. That's the only way anything's going to change. But in the meantime, guys, please stay safe, stay together, do what you have to do. And remember, we're all in this together. We need to have solidarity with our black and brown brothers and sisters. We need to have working class solidarity. We need to stick together and move forward. And to the families of Robert Fuller and Malcolm Harsch, I'm sorry. But I want to tell you guys that this sort of thing isn't going to go on forever. It can't. We're not going to allow it. And I know that's no comfort in losing a son or a husband or a loved one. But I want you guys to know that we stand with you. Americans all around this country stand with you. And we're going to do our part to make sure the system that allows this sort of thing gets changed. But all right, guys, I'm going to let you go. And please, stay safe out there.
I don't feel any pain. I'm staying